Thanks very much, Sandy. Good morning, members, and welcome to the final meeting of the Communities Committee for this term. Obviously, we've been live streamed and recorded. The recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. Can I remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off their video when you are not addressing the meeting. Should you wish to contribute to any item, you should write "speak" in the Teams chat function, and you will be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so that we deal with the business as efficiently and speedily as possible. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member is to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time, or you could write "leave" in the Teams chat function and then join. This will allow us to monitor the member presence during the committee. So we'll move on to item number 1, Sedert apologies. Claire, could you provide the Sedert indicating who's participating remotely and any apologies, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm aware of one apology this morning being from Councillor McCammon. For the benefit of those on Teams, we have 4 members present in the hall this morning, being the Chair, Vice Chair, Councillor Scobie and Stitt. There's currently a number of members not present, being Councillors Dookie Campbell, Councillor Ronnie, Councillor Tate, Thompson and Wood, all other members participating on Teams.
Okay, thank you. Did you say Councillor Thompson's not on? Because I know he's got a dental appointment. He was going to try and join us.
Sorry, Councillor Thompson's currently now online.
He's online, yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, and I confirm my agreement to the participation of those members named as participating remotely. Thank you. Declaration of interest. Do we have any members having any declarations of interest? I see there's a hand up. Ian Blake.
Yeah, Chairman, sorry, it's not a declaration of interest. It was in the previous one. Councillor Woods is having IT problems. He is going to try and join the meeting, but he may have difficulty.
Thanks very much, Ian. We'll take a note of that. Okay, so any declarations of interest? No, I'm not seeing any hands or any speaks. Okay, we'll move on to item 3. That's the minute of the meeting of the 3rd of February. It's for approving. Are we happy with the accuracy and are we happy to approve?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. We'll move on. We'll move on to item number 4, Welfare and Benefits COVID Impact Report. The report provides members with an update on the impact of the COVID-19 on the welfare and benefit services and other associated services. Paula Doherty is available in Teams with Harry Hay to take up any questions this report. Lorna, unfortunately, isn't well this morning, so can't be with us. So, Paula, have you anything to add, or are you ready to go straight to questions?
Straight to questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I'll open it up to the floor. Willie.
Thanks, Chair. I don't know if Paul will be able to answer, or indeed if any of us could answer. Just the work that the welfare and benefit funds have had or have done in terms of COVID impact. I just wonder, in looking forward to April and then again in the autumn, when the cap on energy costs will be risen again. But it's the real effect on energy costs in April, the effect that will have along with the huge rise in inflation that is expected. Could it be anticipated how many people will actually be falling within or going below the poverty line and may require a lot more assistance by way of welfare benefits and so forth, and whether indeed we need to look at the reserves to meet some of the anticipated demand that will be made due to the poverty that will be experienced through I think it was Martin Lewis on the Sunday programme that says this will be unprecedented, the level of poverty that the country will face, and I've no doubt that Dumfries and Galloway will feature in that.
Paul, have you any comment on that?
Thank you for that, Chair. I think it won't really see an increase in the welfare benefits that people receive because it's an increase in the cost that they experience, not a reduction in their physical income. We expect to see the impact in our applications for crisis grants and intend to support customers who are experiencing poverty and hardship through that fund as much as we possibly can.
It's really a political question, perhaps not in terms of what I just, do we need, or would it be prudent or anticipated that we may need to go into reserves to look at, how we do support and assist people who are falling into poverty, and it'll be massive. Just with the rise in energy, as I've said. So it's really a political question whether it needs a tabled motion in the future, Chair.
Okay, I think I'll come in because it's no fair to ask Paul a political question.
No, it's a political question, Chair.
I do appreciate why you're asking it, Willie. And I would suggest it'll be in the budget for the next administration, and it'll be them who'll need to take it forward at this stage. We'll work within the budget we've got from now until May. And from there on in, it'll be in the hands of whoever the administration is. So it'll be interesting times.
Could I come back on another issue, Chair, and it's to do with page 59. You and I and Tommy have communicated with each other on the cost of living award of £150. Again, I think it was the leader in one of the press articles that I read had said that this should go, or words to that effect, this should go direct to the people. I just question whether we should be putting this against council tax, and rather than giving it direct to the people, as the government has done on, what do you call it, the winter fuel payments and so forth.
Well, as you're well aware, you got a full and frank email back from me just explaining it, and appreciate the view might be different from yours, Willie. But I think what I can ask Paula is the way we've distributed that £150, is that the most effective way of getting as much money out to as many people as we could at the time? And there was always going to be some groups of people who might get the full benefit of it. And I think it's it's not just about council tax reduction, because it was meant for everyone that was struggling. And we've addressed some of the issues elsewhere, and there's another paper later on where you'll see how we've done that. But Paul, have you anything you'd like to contribute at this stage?
I think the cost of living payment has reduced the need for customers to pay for their 22-23 council tax liability, which their bills have been issued. Any customer who does experience financial crisis is welcome and supported to apply for a crisis grant, and at which point we will be able to support customers with their immediate needs to meet their living costs, which includes their fuel costs for heating and lighting.
Yeah, because the money was reasonably specific, wasn't it? And Willie, you went back in for the last time, yeah, and then we'll move on. Yeah.
Please, yeah, and thanks for that. And I have no doubt it was an efficient and quick way of getting the money out, but it's headed as a cost of living award. It wasn't given as a council tax rebate. So in that sense, Chair, I still think it should have gone direct to the people for them to determine how they wanted to use that £150 as the cost of living award, rather than through a council tax rebate.
Okay, Paul, do you want to come back in yet?
I think what we have to appreciate is that it's very different in Scotland than it is south of the border, and even indeed in Wales, where water and wastewater charges are billed as part of the council tax demand. So the cost of living payment, cost of living award is reducing customers' need to pay for their utility. So their water and wastewater charges are what's mainly being covered with this payment.
Okay, thank you. Adam, you want to come in? Adam?
So I don't know. Sorry, can you hear me? My laptop's on a bit of a go slow. I think just in response to Ollie's question, I think that it's probably covered another report, but on this agenda, but also as well about the support that is possibly going to be made available to many families and citizens across Dumfries and Galloway, given the PT committee. So I think it's sort of fair to say that as a council, we're doing what we can. I think we could also quite easily spend our entire budget supporting families and still need more. So, I agree with your comments, Chair, about, we'll do absolutely what we can and indeed try and do as much as we can. And I think that would start by, the report that's going to FPT committee next week. And, just urge Willie to read that and hopefully support it.
Okay, thanks. Jane, apologies, I'd missed you off there. See you come in now.
Thank you, Chairman. No problem. What I wanted to say was that I want to make a remark about the support, the active intervention that the Council makes to do with homelessness. And I really do applaud the efforts that are made, because we're avoiding all sorts of problems further down the line if we intervene very early. So thank you for that. And I think you should continue to make that a priority. Chairman, the question that I've got in particular is on page 34 concerning the jump in working days to process Scottish Welfare Fund community care grants. And it looks as if we've doubled the time it takes. And I wonder if Paula could help me to understand that, please.
Yeah, I'll let Paula come in, but I think the starting point was remarkably low and the turnaround was so fantastic in the early days, Jane. But I'll let Paula give you the definitive answer.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Chair. The target processing days is 15 working days, and we have to manage this demand in amongst all the other demands that we are facing as a service. And I feel that we have had a jump in community care grant days to process, and it's regrettable. However, with all the other funds and administrations that we have to deal with, then this is one area that has to slip back to still within acceptable parameters in accordance with the guidance. Customers who are in urgent need, particularly, as you mentioned, Councillor Maitland, around people moving out of homeless accommodation, will have their applications for community care grants fast-tracked or dealt with as quickly as possible to ensure that it doesn't impact on their ability to move.
Okay, Jane.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks very much. I'm looking around the virtual room and I can't see anybody else wanting to speak at this stage. I think that's us, Paula, and I think we need to put in record. I think I'm quoting the local media this week as saying for such a small team, you make such a huge impact in the lives of people in Dumfries and Galloway. So again, from the committee, it's thank you very much to you, Lorna, who obviously can't be with us today, and the whole team. That's been really helpful. So thank you very much. And I'm going to move on to recommendations now. So are we happy to note the upcoming changes to the regulations about council tax reductions? Note the increase in demand for self-isolation support grants and the resultant impact across the service. 3. Note the progress in delivering the COVID-19 tenant grant fund. Note the administration of the £150 cost of living payment. And then 5, finally, agree the approach taken to increase the homeless temporary accommodation rents in paragraph 310. Okay, all agreed? Thank you very much. Paula, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 5, tackling poverty and inequalities in Dumfries and Galloway, allocation of funding for financial year 22-23. Report is to agree the allocation of the tackling poverty and inequalities policy development funding budget for the this coming year, and agree a request to finance procurement and transformation for funding from the local authority COVID Economy Recovery or LACER fund to continue the holiday food direct cash payments for primary and secondary pupils. I've got Mark Malloy available in Teams to take any questions in this report. Mark, have you any update for us at this stage?
No, Chair, just happy to go straight to questions.
Okay then, so questions for Mark on the paper? Okay, Willie? Yeah.
Always waiting on somebody coming in, Chair. However, just on the remarks made in the last item, and what Paula said, that she's anticipating an increase in demand for crisis fund applications and everything else. And really it's whether, and recognise that £1 million or so has been given to anti-poverty again. It's whether there's ever going to be enough in the increase in numbers that is anticipated that will face poverty. And what I would like to see, and maybe for Adam to look at it in terms of his finance and procurement, that we do make available funds from the reserves to meet any demand given the crisis that we could be facing April onward and worse into the autumn.
Mark? I'm not sure there was actually a question. I think it was more Willie was stating his position on it. I think is probably the best way of putting that. Anybody else got a question for Mark at this moment in time? We can come back to Willie's position just in a minute. Jane?
It's just a quick question, and I know it's your heart, Chairman. It's to do with the money going to the poverty reference group. And I just wondered, does the poverty reference group at all encompass the care leavers and looked after children's champion board type attendees? How do we make certain that we have their voices heard? Mark, if I could possibly have that.
It's actually in the 314, Jane, but I'll let Mark come in.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Maitland. In terms of the report, there's a proposed allocation of £10,000 to the Tackling Poverty Reference Group, and that's to support the involvement of volunteers so that the finance is not a barrier to their involvement. I think at the moment we're just in the process of doing an additional recruitment drive to make that group more diverse and ensure that it's representative of all groups, and that includes young people and care experienced young people. And there's absolute links between that group through my wider remit between the work of the Champions Board and listen to us with this group, so I can give the assurance that we do make sure that the voice of care experienced young people is fed into this wider work.
Okay, thanks. You okay with that, Jane?
That was the point I was trying to make, whether or not we actually encompass their voices. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mark from the Chair, I'm not seeing too much here. The payment that we're putting in place, the extra payment up till the end of this financial year, that's over. That's why we're only asking FPT for a proportion of the total LASER funding, am I correct?
Essentially, to try and maximise the amount of funding allocated, we've got the request to finance procurement transformation for part of the LASER fund to cover the direct cash payments for holiday food, and that would allow us to continue it right through until the February school break next year, which would take us into the time when the budget setting for 23-24 would come in, where members at that time would be able to make a decision in terms of the longer term aspect of that.
Yeah, I think I'm particularly on the bit is at 316 in the report. We're increasing it from £17.50 a week to 20. That's the intention, at least, so that it recognises the rising in food costs out there in the community. Yeah, am I right?
Yeah, no, Chair, you're correct in that that amount we're proposing to increase on the basis of inflationary costs and food elements, and to support our families, because I know it's always been a commitment of this council to support families and children and young people, and that the proposal in the paper continues to reflect that and ensure that we are offering an amount that allows families to essentially feed their children during the holiday period.
Okay, Mark, thanks for making that clear for us. Any other questions for Mark? I'm not seeing anything in the hall or in the virtual room, so I'm going to move to recommendations. Are members happy to agree the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2? Great. Willie, do you want to come in?
Yeah, and I'm happy with what's said in 2.2, and I'm looking at 3.14, and Mark indeed making reference to make a decision for the longer term. And I'm looking at 13 there, point 13, Emergency Energy Payment System Programme for vulnerable and older people. Again, I just ask that, this is asking finance and procurement, whether indeed, I did address it to Adam there, whether we ask for finance and procurement to gear itself up to any further demand on crisis, that we do look at reserves as a means of funding, the whole issue of poverty in Dumfries and Galloway.
I think that's a given, Willie, because it's there's a significant proportion of that LACER money still available, and there'll be, I would suggest there'll be a paper going to FPT how we're going to use it. Okay, so your point's well made, and I'm ready to move on. We've had agreement on the two recommendations. So thanks very much, Mark. We'll move on. Item number 6. The Transforming Integrated Customer Service Centres across Dumfries and Galloway report provides members with an update on the progress of the review of integrating customer services and related issues, including the impact of COVID-19. I've got Ailsa Freeman available on Teams to take any questions. Good morning, Ailsa. Have you got anything to add to your report at this stage?
Morning, Chair, morning, members. No, nothing further to add. Thank you. Happy to go to questions.
Okay, so go straight to questions for Ailsa. I'm not seeing anybody. Okay, I'm not getting anybody wanting to come in. Sorry, Willie.
Thanks, Chair. It's just appreciate Ailsa's report here. I'm just looking at the COVID-19 impact and service, and this has begun restarting in phased approach from 29th of June, and then on 3.4.1, and it's those being face-to-face customer services. I just wonder, Ailsa, if there's any indication as to when all the face-to-face services would be opening up. I'm looking at, just as an example, planning and how customers can access a face-to-face as yet. Planning as one, but I'm sure there will be others. When we're going to get back to something that's more aligned to normality as we know it anyway now, Ailsa?
Thanks for that, Councillor Scobie. Unfortunately, I don't have any information about when are planning to, pardon upon, resume face-to-face appointments, but I'd be happy to look into that for you and get back to you after the meeting.
Yeah, okay, so you'll keep in touch with Willie direct. Jane, sorry, it's you again, and then Ian Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a sort of a point of really, I suppose, governance, Chairman. There's no impact study needed for this because we're not supposedly changing anything, but we are changing. We're changing times, and we're changing. In a couple of instances, we're changing from no fee to £20 per 2-hour appointment for a heritage service. And I just wondered whether there was any information as to what that would do or any sort of effect upon our communities. Now, I appreciate it is minor, but, I think there is a change being made and we've got to recognise that. And we ought to be explicit.
Ailsa, any comment?
I'm have to come back. It was advice from governance that it didn't require an impact assessment. However, I take Councillor Maitland's points on board, and we'll certainly monitor the situation. And going forward, we will continue to review the services that we deliver and any impact that it may have on the communities and customers.
Okay, Jane.
Yeah.
Jane, you're breaking up.
Well, all I was saying is that I don't think it warrants stopping this in its tracks now, but I do take assurance that the impact will be looked at, and possibly it might be worth bringing a review back, just to a very brief indication to members what is actually happening in terms of numbers.
Okay, that's no problem, Jane. I think Ailsa's given you that assurance. Ian Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry. Yeah, Ailsa, hello. It's in regard to paragraph 332, where it goes into it's a registration service and the number of registrations for births, marriages, civil partnerships, etc. The second bullet point, it showed that there were 1,065 marriage and civil partnership ceremonies that had still to be registered, and that was pre-lockdown. My first question would be what caused that backlog in the first place, because obviously COVID wasn't a factor in that case. And then when we go on to paragraph 3.6, we see that during 2021, the registration service processed 4,283 new marriage applications, which was a 29% increase. I would assume that increase would probably go on to 2022 because of the COVID situation, where people that couldn't get married during the lockdown are now coming forward. What preparations been made for this and with regard to staff numbers and the availability of registration? Thank you.
Thank you for that. With regard to the marriage backlog, that was at the end of the first lockdown from March to June. Marriages and civil partnerships, along with birth registrations, were suspended. So those were the marriage applications that we had received prior to the March 2020 lockdown for the up and coming 3 months, March, April, June. And we weren't able to process those. We had to reprocess them, if you like, because we weren't able to conduct the ceremonies, but we were able to, we still had the paperwork that had been submitted to us. There was a 29% increase last year, which for 2021, which with regards to marriages, and this year we are experiencing a 70% increase on that volume from last year. So we have introduced a new business process, which we did in August 2020. We've continued to review that, monitor the impact of that process, and we move our resources, if you like, dependent on what stage of the marriage processes we need. And we're planning right now for the up and coming year and how we will use resources. But at the moment, the staff are doing a great job in dealing with the increased volume. And as we move forward, we have a region-wide registration team. So although the majority of marriage applications would be for Gretna, the Gretna area, the wider team across the region support the processing of these marriage applications.
Okay with that, Ian? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay.
Certainly, it is not of the staff, I can assure you. I'm very much aware of the work that they do put in with the numbers involved. Equally, there will be some financial benefit for the council too, with the cost of registration will come forward in the budget process. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Ian. Sean?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just in relation to 3.11. Obviously, still note the position with regards to the integrated customer service centres in both East Driggs and North West Community Campus. But is there any indication when we will be able to open these up with the relaxation of some of the COVID rules?
I don't have a time frame at the moment for that, Sean. We're working with the school. The school and our head teacher is very keen to continue with the arrangements, but I think we need to go, as we go forward, we need to look at the impact on the wider community of taking that forward. But at the moment, I don't have an indication of an exact date for that yet.
Okay, Sean. Is that a legacy hand, Sean?
Yeah, I'll just take that down, yeah.
Thanks very much. Thanks for that, Ailsa. I'm not seeing anybody in the room or in the virtual room wanting to speak at this stage or ask a question. I'll just give you a second or two, and then I'm going to move to recommendations. So I'll move to recommendations then, because there's nothing coming in. Are members happy to agree the recommendations set out at 2.1 and 2.6 in the report? Great. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, Ailsa.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Okay, move on to item number 7, the Visitor Management in Dumfries and Galloway evaluation of 2021 and a proposed way forward. The purpose of the report is to share the evaluation of the support offered to communities to maximise opportunities and minimise the negative impacts of the significant increase in visitors to a region in 2021 and to agree the way forward for 2022. We've got Kirsty Peden and Liz Manson available in teams to take any questions. Good morning, Kirsty. Have you anything to add to your report at this stage?
Good morning, Chair. Members, nothing to add. Happy to take any questions.
Okay then, so we'll move straight to questions for Kirsty on this one. Councillor Ingalls.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you for that. Kirsty, thank you for this. It makes good reading. It's a good report. On page 132, item 3.6, it comments on the public toilets and the availability and access to regularly maintained and welcoming facilities, reducing antisocial disposal of human waste. A lot of the toilet facilities, the smaller ones in rural areas, are closed over the winter months. You know, and there's been quite a growth in touring caravans and camper vans over the winter months. You know, it almost says we're closed when these toilet facilities are closed during the winter months, and I'm wondering whether we could find some way of funding these facilities to keep them open over the winter months. You know, a lot of local people use beaches where these toilet facilities are. For me, it would be a step in the right direction to be able to keep these open over the winter months, and I don't know whether that's something we can look at going forward.
Thanks.
Just go ahead, Kirsty, yeah.
Thanks,
Or Karen.
Yeah. Chair, Karen might want to come in. In terms of feedback, certainly from community, we've worked very closely with them where they've identified a local need and tried to create maybe more creative solutions to local need, whereby if there's been a village hall, for example, that has facilities, then we've supported the village hall to either extend their opening hours or contribute to additional cleaning, etc. I think Karen's probably more likely to want to come in around the winter opening and increased opening, but certainly what I would say from the information we have gathered to date is that the facilities we've provided have certainly been welcomed by visitors and indeed residents that are using them across the region. Karen, do you want to come in maybe on the specific extension of opening over winter?
Thank you, Kirsty. Good morning, members, and thank you, Chair. Yes, just to confirm, across the region we have 58 public toilets, as members will be aware. Now, 12 of those are seasonal opening. Now, that's a historical service that is provided, whereby some of the less busier toilets within some of our communities generally close at the beginning of October and reopen again at the start of April. If we were to review that process, we would look to review the budget associated with that, because obviously there would be a staffing element and a cleanliness element. And as Kirsty has said, we will continue to work closely with our communities to look at alternatives as well within communities. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Inglis.
Yeah, to a certain extent it does. I'm just wondering if we could get some sort of report back on what the additional costs would be to keep these facilities open over the winter months, and whether there's funding through COVID recovery or whatever, that we could use to do that for the 22-23 winter period.
I think that's something for the next committee and the next budget, and David, but I'm sure Karen will keep her eye on it, and if there's necessary, a report will come back to the proper committee in the new term. So it certainly won't be this committee, but it will be our successor committee, I would suggest. So I think that's the best assurance we can give you in that one, David, at this moment.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, I've got Jane and then Sean Marshall.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I want to say that I think this was very well received by communities, and people really felt that the council had been proactive, nimble, and very willing to listen. So thank you very much indeed for the efforts that you made. I'm just a tiny bit surprised about your spider diagram for the stewardship, that there appeared to be really very little concern about wild or dirty camping. And I think I probably need to tell you that maybe I received that, and my fellow elected members at community councils, because they were beside themselves with rage about what was going on around Loch Ken. And I know I'm being parochial, and forgive me, Chairman, but I noticed that we haven't talked in moving forward about partnership working with respect to ranger services around Loch Ken, which was absolutely vital. I mean, we had the right person, did a fantastic job, but I think it just kept a lid on things. And with the pressure that you get, I would like to suggest that is included in the notes that we take from this committee about maybe moving forward. But indeed, thank you. I thought it was a really, really good effort, and just shows what you can do when your back's to the wall. Thanks, then.
Thanks very much. I'm sure Kirsty will take on board what you're saying, Jane. Can I move on to Sean and then Gail after that, please? Sean first.
Yeah, just an observation, on David's point. I mean, we have been through some pain with regards to the review of toilets, public toilets across the region. And we've had to make some, hard decisions to actually cut hours and to close some of the toilets down due to lack of funding. And certainly I thought, this is the benefit of actually submitting a budget for 2022-23, because really any kind of additional kind of hours, etc., should have been figured into some sort of budget proposal for 2022-23, rather than trying to maybe depend on money that's maybe available through COVID. It's just an observation, but probably the appropriate way of actually increasing public toilet provision and opening hours during the winter months would have been through the budget process.
Yeah, I think that's noted, Sean. I'm not sure if there's a question in there other than a helpful comment, I would suggest. So I'm going to move on to Gail first, then Pauline, yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Just very briefly, and I think Sean's probably touched on this, that it should maybe have been part of the budget process for next year. But I think what we're beginning to establish now is that people's travel patterns have changed because of COVID. There's still a reluctance for people to go abroad, so they're using their camper vans and local travel more than they ever have before, particularly through the winter, which has been quite interesting. And I think that we will need to factor into maybe the next committee post-election a strategy for next winter. Fortunately, we're going into the spring period where a lot of these facilities will reopen anyway. But I think having we can say we're always wiser in hindsight, and February was budget time, but we're just getting a picture now of how people are continuing to use, as I say, their own personal camper vans and local establishments throughout winter and spring months, which they wouldn't normally have done. So I think we'll need to have a review post-election. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more with you, Gail. Voice of reason as always. Pauline?
Oh, can't see me. Hi. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you. I would totally agree with Gail, and I just wanted to point out that the work that had been done by yourselves, Karen, Kirsty and the team with regards to signage was absolutely brilliant over the course of the pandemic, and also the work that you did with the airs that were set up in Kirkcudbright. I think my fellow councillors and I would agree that has been an absolutely brilliant initiative, so thank you so much. I wanted just to point out for maybe a future committee that, the signage was brilliant. I think there was a lot of takeout from that, but going forward, we really need to work on a stronger no littering campaign. In the Stewartry, we have more bins on the A75 and up the side of Loch Ken, and I know the council completely disagrees with me. I've had many conversations with many fellow councillors and officers on this one, but I was just driving through the area and have loads of photographs that I've taken in my boring way that I do across the rest of the region in the last few days, and there is rubbish everywhere at the moment. The Stewartry is not actually too bad because there are bins, but I think going forward, a no littering campaign, very, very simple with the littering and the no, the put your litter in the bin, as simple a message as that, keep Scotland tidy, back to those old Visit Scotland type campaigns that we used to run would be helpful. So it's just a point to note going forward, but thank you, Kirsty and Karen, for the work that you did during COVID. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Pauline. I'm not sure if there was a question in that. Again, I think it was more a thank you to for the work that Kirsty and the team have done. David Stitt.
Cheers, Chair. Just a comment I'd like to make. I've just had a phone call from police this morning. There's been another second incident of fly tipping in the Suffolk area. It might not be for this, but I just thought I'd bring it to attention. This is twice in 6 weeks somebody's been fly tipping in a lay-by in the Suffolk area. I think I contacted Andy here the last time, they went and cleared it up. But the feedback I got from a community council chair is that when you're getting charged £79 for a ton of commercial waste, it's maybe discouraging people for going to recycling centres, and this has got to start occurring, especially getting near the holiday season.
I think my answer to that, and David, would be it's a hell of a sight more to the fine for fly tipping than £79 to pay for it. So I would suggest it's no for Kirsty here, it's for a different time, a different place. No doubt you'll take that up with the waste management people and the others. Anybody else for Kirsty? Nope, don't see anybody. So in that case, we'll move on to the recommendations. Are we happy to agree the recommendations 2.1 to 2.3? Sorry? Commended and considered, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Okay. Right, I'm getting kept right here in the background. Let's move on now to item 8. Thank you very much, Kirsty. Licensing of sexual entertainment venues, Civic Government Scotland Act 1982. Report asks members to consider the terms of the draft sexual entertainment policy detailed at Appendix 1, and also to approve the holding of a public consultation to obtain views on those terms. I have got Caroline Traynor and Vlad available in teams to take any questions. Caroline, have you anything to add to this at this stage, or are you happy just going straight to questions?
Happy to go straight to questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions now for the officers? Sorry, no, I've not seen any hands either in the room or virtually. So I'm just going to move straight to the recommendations, Caroline and Vlad. So are members happy to agree the recommendations 2.1 to 2.3? Okay. Yes, agreed. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Caroline. That was easy.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 9, National Awards and Achievements for 2017 to 2022. The report provides members with a summary of the National Awards and Achievements for the period the 1st of April 2017 to the 31st of March 2022 and future work to build on this success. I've got Donna Allardyce available through Teams to take any questions on the report. Good morning, Donna. Have you anything to add to this at the moment? Any new recognition nationally, or are we happy to go to questions?
Yeah, nothing to add, Chair. Happy to go to questions.
Thank you very much, Donna. Have we any questions for the officer here? I'm not seeing anything just now. I think we were keen to recognise the work and some of the achievements of the staff over the last 5-year period. Some of them have been truly remarkable, and I think that's why this is here. It's to bring it to the public attention just the work that goes on behind the scenes, and the recognition that some staff members and some groups have actually received locally, nationally, and British-wise, Scotland-wise, locally, or in British terms. So, has anybody else got anything to come forward here? No. John, do you want to come in?
I've just got to concur with Andy. When you see this list written down there, it's amazing how many awards we've won over the 5 years, etc. So definitely the staff of all the staff, they've got to be congratulated on these achievements.
Thanks very much, John. I think you're echoing my sentiments, and I'm certainly echoing yours back again. Donna, and through you and through the substantive director and the interim director, if be obliged if you would pass this round the staff to say the commendation from this committee to the staff over the last 5 years has been, their input has been tremendous. I think particularly during the pandemic, where they just went away and above and beyond what could be expected of them. So for that, there's eternal thanks, I would suggest, from the people in the region and also from this committee. Anybody else anything to add to that? I see Jane's got in the chat, fully agree, as Councillor Maitland. So again, the only thing, Donna, is, and through you, Derek and Sean, to make sure that this gets relayed to the staff, our thanks for all their efforts over the last 5 years. So I'm going to now move to recommendations to get it formally done. So I'll be happy to agree recommendations 2.1 and 2.2. Yeah, thanks very much. We'll move on to item number 10, Civic Affairs Annual Report. The purpose of this report is for members to approve the annual report on the use of civic hospitality budget in 2019-20 and consider the position for 21-22. We've got Liz Manson available in Teams to take any questions. Liz, have you anything to add? Are you happy going straight to questions?
Happy just to go straight to questions, Chair. Thank you.
Tracy, can you come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. I don't really have a question. Well, that's a lie. Page 196. Could we have found a photo with less chins, please? But then that's just a vanity point. But on a serious note, Chair, for the past 5 years, it's been an absolute privilege to undertake the civic role of Provost of Dumfries. I've had the great fortune to meet many amazing and hard-working groups, organisations and individuals, all who are dedicated to this town and region. I've been humbled many, many times over. Now, I've participated in Burns events, sports, youth, LGBT and pride, twinning, welcoming international visitors, fundraising, schools, Christmas events. Now, you know you've finally arrived when you're switching Christmas lights on. Historical events, Dumfries Tattoo, church, commemorations, armed forces, music, dance, arts, galas, Good Neighbours, which is a great honour in itself, disability events, women's and men's groups, rotaries. I even showed a 10-metre visitor around the town. and there's been many, many more. It's been a busy 5 years. Even through COVID, many events moved online. Oh, and not to forget the recent very exciting city status bid. So, Chair, I'd like to thank members for giving me this great opportunity, but I'd also greatly like to thank Liz and her team for their continued support and guidance, especially April, Pam, Joe and Nikki. And I know there's other people that do loads in the background, but these are the ones that I have been directly in contact with. I hope I've done the role justice in that I've represented the people of Dumfries, my hometown that I love dearly, with the greatest of respect. Thank you for indulging me, Chair.
Thanks very much, Tracy. I think your comments are noted and taken on board by Liz, and no doubt will be passed on to the whole team. I fully appreciate you put on record your thanks for all the different ways they've supported you during your term as Provost. So I'm really pleased that that's been positive for you. Anybody else want to come in? Don't think so, Liz. I think you're getting off light here. So I'm going to move to the recommendations. We're asked to approve the annual report on civic hospitality for 21-22, as set out in paragraphs 3.6 to 3.11 and in the appendix. We're happy to approve? Approved, thank you. We'll move on to item number 11, the cultural strategy for Dumfries and Galloway. The report presents to members a revised culture strategy for Dumfries and Galloway for the period 2022 to 2030 for their consideration and agreement. The proposed new strategy is attached as an appendix to this report. Lee Seaton is available through Teams to take any questions on the report. Good morning, Lee. Have you anything to add at this stage?
Morning, Chair. Morning, members. No, nothing further to add. Just happy to go to questions if we have any, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Gail, and then Jim Dempster.
Thank you, Chair, and morning, Lee. I welcome the report and the vision of the strategy. It's quite nice to see a longer-term vision of a 9-year strategy, because I think as councillors we're quite guilty of sort of doing 2- and 3-year plans and only as far as the next election. So I think the ambition of it is to be commended. I think it's a wee bit light in the detail at the moment when you read through the strategy. There's a lot of words and in quite big font, but not an awful lot of strategic detail yet. And I'm assuming that that's coming from the fact that that detail will need to derive from the partnership group that we're looking at. So I suppose I apologise because I was put back on this committee in the last year or so I wasn't involved in the 2020 discussions. So I suppose for me the questions would be who are the D&G Cultural Strategy Reference Group, who sits on that and who do they represent? Who will be on the partnership group, and then I suppose even more importantly, what councillor representation or elected member representation will be, what will be the involvement within that group, because I really feel with any strategy, if we don't have political leadership and drive, it will go nowhere. So I suppose it's just trying to assure that although the council will be overseeing administratively this partnership group, where does that political leadership tie in with that? And as I say, what will be the representation on that group? And will there be an elected member, whether it be the chair of the appropriate committee or the leader or deputy leader? Because as I say, I do really feel that for things like this to succeed, you need a political leadership driver to make them succeed. And so that's basically my questions at the moment. We'll see what the answers come up with. Thank you.
Okay, Lead, just carry on.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Gail. So yes, you're correct with your reference to the partnership group. So in terms of getting to this stage, clearly a significant amount of engagement spread over a longer period of time because of the interruption of COVID. So the cultural sector reference group is made up of representatives from organisations and practitioners from across the cultural sector in Dumfries and Galloway. So some of those that are smaller and larger scale organisations across all 4 district areas, including DGU, Dumfries and Galloway Unlimited. The Council's cultural officers coordinated and facilitated that group, and then we also, Councillor McGregor, used a second reference group, which was the existing CLD strategic partnership that exists, so that they have been points that we've always engaged with when we've had various drafts of the strategy. It's accepted that the partnership for culture that's referred to in the second recommendation, so that's not a dissimilar structure that is being proposed to a national partnership for culture that exists, but we're talking about a Dumfries and Galloway partnership for culture, with an acceptance that the current reference group would need to grow significantly in terms of representation. So, for example, SOCI have now appointed a cultural lead. We're looking to engage with them just now. We have some education input just now in terms of Dumfries and Galloway College. We'd look to widen that across the FE and HE sector. And the role of the council, we would propose to facilitate this partnership for culture. It's very much the view of the cultural sector reference group members that should not be absolutely council-led. So the structure and governance, we haven't yet set in stone, and that's part of the initial phases of the Partnership for Culture group that we look to establish as to how that structure would best operate. We're looking at models that are in existence in other parts of the country that members of the reference group have brought to us, and absolutely some council representation on that would be key and critical, because we are still a significant partner in cultural and heritage delivery across the region, but so is the wider sector. So proposal would be that we would bring further reports back as that partnership for culture would develop and evolve an action plan for delivery of the vision and ambitions of the strategy, which very clear in that they have been agreed and signed off by the reference group that comprises those representatives from across the region at this stage. Thank you.
Okay,
thanks very much. Yeah, I suppose just a slight follow-up then, because that does give me some comfort, but it's certainly around, it does say on page 231 that the new group will explore a most effective framework for delivery of the plan, and look at partnership models that could be possible. So I suppose it's just ensuring that comes back to elected members at some point as well. I suppose just for final sign-off and to ensure that we're comfortable that the direction of travel chosen by that partnership group aligns with our vision as well. And as I say, I'm in other members' hands, but I would be really keen to see some form of elected member on that group. I think probably the leader or deputy leader or the convener of the appropriate committee. But as I say, I'm in other members' hands at the moment. And we can maybe discuss that at a future meeting. We don't need to determine it today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Lee, just so I picked you up correctly, so basically what you're saying is the makeup of that group will be reported to a future committee. Is that what you said, yeah?
Yes.
Right, okay, so that's I think that's the comfort you're looking for, Gail. Jim Dempster?
Thanks, Chair. It's not so much a question for Lee as an observation. With your indulgence, I would hope that the strategy is adopted. It's an excellent document, but it now impacts on other council committees. And this Still Area Committee has set aside £20,000 to be used to support cultural strategy once the document is a live document within the council. So my request through you, Chair, is that either Lee or communities governance link with Still Area Committee governance to make sure that there's a report to Still Area Committee that will release these funds and it will start to deliver the strategy that's been set out in the document today. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, okay. I think we can take that as a given, Lee. You're okay with that? Yep. So be assured, Jim, that I'll come back to Still Area, okay?
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you.
Anyone else? Willie, in you come.
Thanks, Chair. And, like many have said, I welcome the document, the cultural strategy for Dumfries and Galloway. And indeed, I presented members with a copy of information that I had gleaned from websites, to people that want to come to areas and pay a massive amount of money just to visit an area, just to do something in an area. And it's, you know, people paying up to £1,000 for knitting and sewing and other cultural issues. And I think we've got to use the document as much as possible to try and derive as much benefit, not only for the local people in terms of the culture, but how we can draw down on visitor numbers. There's reference to the international numbers. But I think if you take the Lake District, for instance, I think about 1.6 million people try to get into the Lake District, yet some 600 and more thousand people can't get booked in the Lake District, yet an hour up the road you can be in Dumfries and Galloway that has so much to offer, as, if not as much as what the Lake District can. And I think in the document, we need to be promoting the document as a means of bringing more and more tourists into both international and people on staycation to come to Dumfries and Galloway, and to make things available to them. And as I say, some of the courses that people pay extortionate money just to stay and do things, and we've got so much culture in our area that we can provide that. And I hope, and I know that the team is working on this in terms of how the George Hotel could be turned into a tourist, leisure and cultural centre. And that is only hopefully a start to how we could roll that out throughout the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, using the cultural document that I have before us today, Chair.
Thanks very much, Willie. I think that was more a statement than a direct question. Jane?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I think there are a number of things which are to be commended in this this strategy. And one of the things particularly I would like to explore as to how the next council will, I suppose, be informed about what is being proposed. I particularly commend the issue about recognising that older and disabled people were able to participate really much more than they have before through online activities. I looked at the number of people who were on the Kakubra history online seminars, webinars, and I mean, there were many people there who normally would not come out in an evening and who couldn't, and possibly for transport reasons or reasons of safety. And I would like to be absolutely sure that this particular strategy will definitely build on that, and that members will have an opportunity to promote that. So it's a question of picking that one in particular. There are other issues which are good, but I think that's a really important change that's happened since COVID. People being able to, people having the confidence to go to Zoom meetings, which they would never have done pre-COVID, simply wouldn't have done it. So I think there's a great opportunity there to make our cultural strategy considerably more inclusive than it has been before.
Jane, thanks very much. Again, I think that's more your viewpoint, and it's well made, and I think Lee will take that in the spirit it's intended, a very positive one. Just for my own bit here, it's no coincidence that this is immediately before the major events strategy paper, the next item on the agenda, and the two are inextricably linked. There's no doubt about that. I think that's what Willie was getting at when he was talking earlier. I've got one thing, and I think maybe what we do need to bottom out here, or certainly we've not got time in this council, but next one, is we need to actually get a formula for working out what visitor spend is, because everybody's got a different version or different view, and it's misleading at times. But I think that's something maybe, Lee, that you can take forward in the next council, if you get that kind of political direction, shall we say, and take it from there. Is there anybody else want to speak at this moment in time then? Sorry, Derek, you'd like to come in, the Director? Sorry, Acting Chief.
Thanks, Chairman. Just when you move to the recommendations, I just think there's a point of governance that I'm certainly keen to just ensure in professional advice to you, and that would be maybe you want to extend recommendation 2.2 along the lines of with detailed proposals on the governance, including membership of the partnership coming to a future committee. I think that just ensures that the proposals are in the gift of members, and therefore that gives you that assurance. So I think that would be for your consideration. Thanks, Chairman.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Claire here. I think she's got a note of that, and I think, Gail, that actually meets with. Yeah, I see you've got perfect in the chat. Thank you. That just closes that loop. So in that case, then we'll move on to the recommendations. So we are happy to agree 2.1. Yep, and then happy to agree 2.2 as amended. Can you just read out, Claire, what you've got again, just to be so we're absolutely sure?
Okay, thank you. To be extended, what's there with detailed proposals on membership coming back to a future meeting.
Yeah, future meeting of this committee. Yeah, okay, thanks very much, Claire. Okay, you okay with that, Lee? That's a direction from this committee to the next one. Thank you very much. So we're happy to agree 2.1, 2.2 as is, 2.2 as amended. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Lee. I take it you'll be staying on. Sorry, we'll move on to item number 12, the Major Festivals and Events Strategy 2018 to 21 and the 22 to 23 Community Events Fund and Major Events Strategic Fund. Report is to seek members' approval to award grant funding from the Community Events Fund and the Major Festival and Events Strategic Fund based on the recommendation from our multi-agency events partnership. I've got Ian Barr has joined Lee on Teams to take any questions. Have either of you got anything to add to this? Is there any last minute update, or are you happy going straight to questions?
Nothing to add, Chair, and Ian will be available to answer any specifics on grant recommendations if required. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So we'll open it to questions. I'm not seeing any at this stage. I think this might be an easy ride for you, Lee, if you'll excuse the pun. No. No questions for you at all, Ian or Lee. So I'm going to move straight to recommendations. I'll be happy to agree the recommendations are set out at 2.1 and 2.2. Oh, sorry, David Ingalls, you want to come in?
Hi, sorry, Chair, it was just a quick one on the Scottish Rally. Yeah. Hang on a second till I find it. I believe they've got a grant of 5,000 plus an extra 2,500 to go if it starts in Dalbeattie. Was there a reason for that? What was behind that reason to select Dalbeattie?
Thank you. The application wasn't detailed around the start and finish locations, Councillor. And so the events partnership are keen to bring the event to Dalbeattie. And as you can see, there's a firm recommendation of £5,000 for the rally's core costs and the incentive to bring it to Dalbeattie for £2,500. And that's because of the overview of where events currently take place and the benefits that would bring to that part of the region.
You want back
so
in,
I'm
David?
assuming then, yeah, sorry, Chair, I'm assuming then that it's really to do with the rally course, that Dalbeattie's the most feasible area, right? Okay, thanks, Ian. Cheers.
Okay, thanks, David.
Thanks, Chair.
Anyone else? No. David, your hand's still up. I'm assuming that's legacy.
It is, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. So, somebody else? Pauline, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, coming in last minute. Hi, Ian. Hi Lee, just a quick question. We've got a wee problem going forward, as you probably know this year, with WT and some of the forests with regards to the trees that are down, and therefore some of the events that may not take place going forward into this year and next year. Is there any chance, Ian, that you could have some comms with the Scottish Forestry and Land Estates or Scottish Forestry Association and see if we could chase them up a wee bit somehow so that we can ensure that some of these events will take place, or do they not come under the council's remit? I'm probably unsure as to where they sit, so if you could just give us a wee update on that, that would be brilliant. Thanks very much, Ian.
Hello, we are in touch with Forestry and Land Scotland Councillor. Before the Galloway Hills Rally, we've got the Scottish Rally, and the planning for that has started in earnest. We are in touch with them, and we're trying to resolve as quickly as possible the issue that you mentioned.
Okay, thanks, Ian. David Stitt.
Just a bit. I attended a seminar last week myself and Chris Travis with Professor John Lennon, some voice of Forestry Scotland. The extent of the damage in Dalbeattie Wood is worse than what they ever thought. And what they told us last week at the seminar, it could take up to 6 months to clear some of the pathways. They might not be able to use some of the bike tracks. They might have to put new ones in. And they said that hopefully they can get it repaired. And I know Dalbeattie Hard Rock Challenge, they've already looked at their programme for October, and I think they're going to be changing the routes, have the still same running route, and maybe have to do double bike routes because the damage is beyond repair in some places.
Okay, so I'm assuming, Ian, you'll be updating the next committee and members, ward members and people involved as this progresses through the process, am I right? Through the planning process?
Yes, I will indeed, Chair. I think that the Dalbeattie location for the Galloway Hills Rally is for the ceremonial starts and finishes rather than for the Dalbeattie Wood, but I'm still very disappointed to hear that update from Councillor Stitt.
Thanks very much. I think that's everybody now. Yeah. So I'm going to move on to the recommendations. Are we happy to agree recommendations 2.1 and 2.2? And yeah, and obviously, Ian, you'll update everybody with the progress in terms of the forest routes and stuff. Yeah.
I will do, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Ian. I'll move on now to item number 13, the consultation mandate for new sport and physical activity strategy for the period from 2023 to 2027. Lee, this is you again, isn't it? So the report presents members with a consultation mandate outlining the proposed approach for the development of a refreshed sport and physical activity strategy for the region for the period 2023 to 2027. As I said, Lee is available to take any questions on this. Are we ready to go straight to questions, Lee?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a procedural report outlining our planned approach for engagement in this new strategy, so happy to take any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking to see if there's anybody wanting to speak. Doesn't look like it. I think given this is a mandate for you to let your team go on and get the job done, Lee, I'm ready, I think, just to move straight to the recommendations. So we've been asked to agree the consultation mandate for a refreshed sport and physical activity strategy set out in the appendix. We agreed? Yeah. Okay, that's agreed. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 14, management of roads, occupation permits and fees. Report by the Heady Roads and Infrastructure. The purpose of this report is to agree the arrangements for Section 59 of the Roads Scotland Act 1984, which covers road occupation permits. I've got Mike Fox and I think Mike Grunwell available through Teams to take any questions on the report. Mike, is there any update, or are you just going straight to questions?
Thanks, Chair. Just happy to go to questions.
Okay, thank you. So we've got questions for the officers. John Martin.
Thanks, Chair. I've just been asked by Archie Dryborough on behalf of the Legion for the Armed Forces Day. Will there be a charge? Will they still be charged for their Armed Forces Day with a fee when they march up and down the high street, march up the high street and then back down again?
Okay, thanks, Chair. If I may, I'll just get Mike to come in for this one, please.
Yep. No, Chair and members. The Armed Forces Day with the march is actually a public procession licence. And in the past, because it's held on Dumfries Town Centre in the pedestrianised zone during the pedestrianised times, there's been no requirement for a traffic order of any sort. So there's no fee for the armed forces. The Section 59 permits, which refer to occupations, we currently issue permits to the armed forces for their recruitment drives and occupations, and we deal with those as registered charity permits.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much for clearing that up for us, Mike. Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. Easy day today, Mike. Okay, so I'm going to move to the recommendations. Are we happy to agree the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2? Yeah, okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Mike and Mike. I'll now move on to item number 15, which is the Public Realm Capital Programme. Purpose of this report is to provide members with the information on the proposed Public Realm Asset Class Programme for 22-23 to 24-25 and to provide details of the schemes to be undertaken during 22-23 within the Public Realm Asset Class for approval. Again, we've got Mike Fox online, and William is with us as well through Teams to take any questions on the report. Just a second, Davy, have you anything to add to your report just now before I let Davy in? Is it on the same? Have you anything to add at this moment in time? Can you go straight to questions or contributions from members?
Thanks, Chair. Just happy to go to questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. Mike, it's on bottom of page 295, the New Abbey Stroke Road, Pleasance Avenue, Park Road Junction. This has been ongoing for many years, because I attended a couple of meetings in Trequeer School and at Park Farm. Has there been any, I know pre-COVID probably preempted a lot of this, but has there been a change to the plans? Because at first I think they were expecting, when this first started, the ball rolling, they were expecting a lot of traffic to be using this side of the Dumfries to get the new hospital, but I believe that's not the case now. I think they're using other routes. Has there been a change to the plans, or is it still going ahead what it was when we attended the meetings about 3 or 4 years ago?
Okay, through yourself, Chair, if I may, I'll bring in Duncan MacDonald from Engineering Services, who can give an accurate update on where we are with the overall programme of the work.
Yourself, Chair. Councillor, the plans are very much as they were you referred to that were previously brought to the public. The scheme comprises improvements to the junction in terms of control of traffic through the junction, but also a heavy focus on active travel elements in terms of cycling and walking, and promoting that through that area as part of a direct route towards the new hospital. So the proposals are very much as the public will remember them, as was consulted on some months and probably over a year ago now at least. Yeah.
Okay with that, Davy?
Fine, Andy, thanks.
Jim Dempster, sorry, I've got quite a few coming in here now. Sean, then Jim Dempster, and then Ian Howie in that order, please. Okay, Sean?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just looking at appendix, might have been helpful to actually include in the projects that were being brought forward from 2021-22, because at a glance I noticed that if I look on page 310, Anneley Road for planned structural overlay and Stapleton Road, Kimmeter Place, these are not new schemes. These are ones that were meant to be done in 2021-22. So, and also I just noticed as well in 311 Butterdales. So it would have been helpful if we could have had an indication which of these have been brought forward from this year. And also as well, I did raise previously about getting a copy of the priority reserve list for schemes, because there's a number of schemes on there. I certainly know that, you know, I asked for an inspection report on Sydney Road at Eastriggs. I've asked for that for 2 or 3 years, and I was led to believe it was on the reserve list. And also the likes of continuation of Port Street. There's the final phase to be done down there of the road, and also the footway between Eastriggs and Dornoch. I think they started phase of 1 or 2, and then there's no indication of what's happened to that now. I take it when it's in a phased approach, I would expect that, you know, the next year there would be phase 2, phase 3, etc. But on those schemes, they seem to just dropped off the radar.
Thanks, Chair. I can come in just to answer those in order. We're looking and continuing to try and develop the appendices with this report, and I think the opportunity to identify schemes that have been carried over from the previous year is a piece of work that we can clearly undertake if it's going to make and provide clarity for members. As regards the priority reserve list of schemes, again, that can be made available to members if they so wish.
Yes, please, Mike. Thanks for that.
Okay, so Mike, you just undertake that to the all 21 members of the committee. You know, outside this meeting. Yeah, that'd be brilliant if you can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Jim Dempster.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just a quick question. It's probably a compliment more than anything else. It's on page 299, the bottom paragraph in 3.29 in the committee report, where it talks about a funding allocation of £1.20 or £1 million for the creation of a new cemetery in Dumfries. And I remember praising officers at the time for being forward thinking, but I also asked for a report outlining how that would be achieved right across the region, because we don't want to be doing work like this in splendid isolation. And an assurance was given at the time that we would get a report at some stage on how we might address new cemeteries right across the region. So it's a good idea. I'd just like to see it expanded, and we were promised a report, and I just wondered when that would likely to be coming forward, Chairman. So delighted to see this particular aspect and want to see it rolled out further, and how members can have a look at that in time. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. If I can bring in Stephen Herriot just to answer that.
Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks. Yes. The funding that we've identified for Dumfries Cemetery, members maybe remember, was out of the slippage and across the council and the capital programme COVID pandemic, and we took the opportunity of taking that kind of lump sum to pay for the works, the whole project at Dumfries Cemetery, so that it wasn't impacting on the land part of the public realm asset class over a period of 5 years. It would have effectively halved that budget. So that's been identified separately out of the slippage. I think going forward, we've got a piece of work to undertake that we anticipate doing in the year ahead on the burial strategy. We'll review and revisit work we did in the past on capacity in cemeteries and the need for extensions or the need for new sites. And I think it's a good point made by Councillor Dempster that as part of that strategy, we will come back to members with recommendations on kind of timescales for renewals to increase capacity, but also an indication of what costs might be for members to consider in setting a capital strategy in future years.
You okay with that, Jim?
Many thanks for that. Thanks, Chairman. That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian Howie and then Pauline.
Thanks, Chair. I see you on page 320, King Street, Castle Douglas is down for an intelligent transport system implemented. Now, King Street was resurfaced just last year at considerable cost to the council and at inconvenience to our traders. Is what proposed a legal requirement? Is it necessary? Is this something that must be done, or is it something that can be delayed?
Thanks, Chair. If I can come in there, the proposal is to upgrade the current Pelican crossing on King Street. The works that were carried out last year were obviously resurfacing operations, and the plan at the moment is purely to upgrade the hardware for the Puffin crossing.
Okay, Ian, you happy with that?
I'm sure. I believe it is a legal requirement, though, Mike. Am I correct in assuming that?
The upgrade is we currently have a Pelican crossing, and the proposal is to upgrade to a Puffin crossing. As regards the legal requirement, this is what I would term a normal upgrade to the existing asset.
Okay. So,
correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Ian. Are you okay with that, Ian? Are you still got your hand up? Are you comfortable with that?
I'll speak offline with the officers concerned, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. No problem. Pauline?
I'm really good at having half my head in the picture today. Sorry. Hi. Thank you, Chair. Hi, Mike. Hi, Neil. Just a quick question. Page 322. I could be wrong here, but with the speed limits and traffic camming, I see that you've got Gelston and Twynham, but Auchencairn's missing. Is that going through in the following year's budget? Because I think it's proceeding. It's still got to be authorised, but should that be on the list, Mike? Thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. If I may, I will bring in Tony Topping here.
Just come in, Tony.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Drysdale. Yeah, Auchencair is actually on page 322 under, we've maybe got it under Nithsdale by mistake. I'm just having a look. But Auchencairn is there.
That's where it is.
The plan is, it's Gelston, Twynham, Auchencairn, and I think it was Carrollistown was the other four that we're planning on doing. So yes, they are on the list. And the reason that I've not done all 24 schools on the speed limits and traffic calming programme, I just thought that was too many. I'll introduce the next 12 schools 6 months on. Then we've got the full list of all the schools to do.
Perfect. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Chair.
Okay with that, Pauline. Jane? No, I think it's just a comment from Jane, sorry. There's a hand going up. Who's that? Oh, Stephen, come in.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, really welcome to see quite a lot of the items in this capital programme. I'm sure a lot of, if members of the public were reading this, they'd readily identify a lot of, for example, roads that have been reported for some time. I suppose my main question is, obviously, we've got budget. We've got a list of programmes there, of pieces of work there, but I think we really need to know that there's a high degree of confidence we can actually deliver on this. And is that something that we've been able to bottom out now in terms of procurement, external contractors, our own staffing, etc.? Because it looks great on paper, but I think people really need to see this on the ground. So how confident are we, and what have we got in place to ensure that we can deliver? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. If I can come in on that particular question from Councillor Thompson. There's significant work being carried out in preparation for, and much of that is procurement in relation to the capital programme. There's a substantial surface dressing programme within the Appendix 2, which requires, like every other large piece of a road maintenance operation, actually requires significant planning to comply with statutory requirements. The programme that's in front of you, I have full confidence that we'll be able to deliver it. For members' fullest information, we currently have a contractor engagement for initial surface dressing operations in advance of actually work starting on the ground. And the Roads Recovery Fund allocations that are currently out there, we all subcontractor engagement that's due to start in the next couple of weeks. So we will see a fairly substantial turnaround in the amount of activity out there carrying out road maintenance activity.
You okay with that, Stephen?
Yeah, so I mean, in one sense, it's I suppose music to people's ears that we know all the work's going to get started just in time for holiday period when everybody will be on the roads. But you can't keep everybody happy. But ultimately, the main thing is that we tackle the roads, and if we're able to do that, Mike, that's great that you've got a system in place. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for that, Willie.
Yeah, Chair, I was just seeking clarification, though, Mike, on page 281 in terms of cafes and bars. Sorry. My apologies, Chair. Shouldn't have gone out. I'll pick it up with Mike.
So Willie will pick that up with you offline, Mike. Okay, so that's helpful. Thank you, Willie. Anybody else got a question?
As we are now on 15, Chair.
Willie, okay, in you come, yeah.
Grateful for your guidance on that one. It's really on, again, page 298, and it's around street lighting. I don't know who would address this, and it's not so much the capital programme and the investment that's being put in it. It's the ability to respond to lights that are not working and complaints. And my understanding is that we've now almost reduced to electricians, and it's maybe a revenue issue rather than a capital, Chair, but just to take cognizance of it, that we're down to maybe only one electrician in the east of the region and one subcontractor in the west. And while we're changing all these lights, are we able to respond timorously to repairs or lights that are already there and maybe not working, in fact not working? I know this is a capital report, but it's just looking at the revenue and the implications of this, lights going out and not being able to respond.
Mike?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, if I can come back in there. The street lighting operations encompasses both our own, I would term direct labour, but also supported by subcontractor arrangements. I think maybe one thing that's not always visible to members of the public is that some of the issues and some of the problems that can occur are not resolvable by ourselves, and it requires Scottish Power input. Scottish Power can also have their own timescales in having to respond to some of these issues, and that can be from a single light that is actually out to a series of lights. So the issue of response times, I mean, we have an arrangement in place where we clearly indicate that we attempt to resolve these issues within 10 working days. But it's just to take cognizance that some of the issues are out with our control.
Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, and I appreciate what Mike has said, and I've dealings with Callum Edgar, and nothing but the highest of praise for Callum and the way that he tries to. It's just the resources, the human resources that we've got. If we could, where at one time there'd be a number of electricians employed directly, and it's what we're actually down to. Notwithstanding what you're saying, Mike, in terms of that it could be a Scottish power issue, but it's just, you know, are we able and capable of responding to the many complaints that come in terms of the number of direct and subcontractors that we use, and we're just giving them a mammoth task, but yet we're still getting customer dissatisfaction. And it's really perhaps to get a further report on that, or to that to be included in the report, just to see the number of complaints to the number of people who are employed to actually do the work in repairing these lights.
Mike, I'm not sure if you can answer that, but
if members are so minded, in relation to the street lighting service, I think the issue is that, you know, there's been quite significant investment over the last few years to increase to numbers to full LED complement within street lights, so that the numbers that we're suffering as in outages significantly less than it used to be when we had old sodium lights. But to say that if there is a desire or a wish to have some form of information or a briefing note for members, then happy enough to take that forward.
okay, I think actually it's probably the answer there, Mike, is you're right to put together some sort of briefing note, and I would circulate it around all 43 members, not just the committee. So if you can do that and agree to do that, that'd be fine. And see Willie's nodding his head. Okay, so I'm going to move on now. So I've got Gail Mcgregor, then Sean Marshall. So Gail first.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Mike. Sorry, my connection dropped out when Councillor Thompson was speaking, so I'm not entirely sure if he's already asked this question. Has the Roads Recovery Fund been fully utilised or fully allocated? And if not, are we able to carry that over into next year?
Just go on, Mike.
Yep, thanks, Chair. It fully spent up, no, but it's been fully allocated for the current year. We have had our own resource, as in direct labour, working on this for this year. We've currently engaged a subcontractor who's going to work with us starting week after next, and we've got a further piece of procurement which will happen within the next sort of 2 to 3 weeks, which will engage another subcontractor to, and the subcontractor gives us the benefit of being able to work on the Roads Recovery Fund 24/7.
24/7? Literally? Right. Best of luck.
Is that you speechless, Gail?
No, I think he's at it.
Okay, Sean.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just really a question for Mike. Just I remember took part in the seminars, you know, when we're doing the review of the roads, etc. service earlier this year. And one of the things that came through, certainly I raised, but a number of members thought it would be helpful as well, is what is the progress being made on kind of like a weekly list by area or just generally across the council for members about where the roads department, what roads being done, where the pothole squads have been redeployed to this week. I fully appreciate the last 6 months have probably been difficult because with COVID and then a number of storms, we've had redeployment of roads department personnel. But I can't help but notice we get absolutely lambasted and hammered on social media, etc., about the state of the roads and potholes, etc. And certainly I won't be the only council that tries to proactively tell people, you know, when the council got to come in and address that. I think at the moment we do get, if it's a road closure, then we get, you know, we get the standard notifications of those. But it's really, it would be really helpful, I think, for all members that we get an indication of what the plan is for roads for the forthcoming week, so we can actually proactively promote that, you know, they've got to be in the area, they've got to be fixing X, Y, or Z, etc. And I know it's something that, you know, we kind of, I think you kind of fully supported and took on board. I know there's a little bit of resource on that, but I just wanted maybe an update on where we are with that.
Okay, thanks to yourself, Chair. We do issue a weekly communication out to members, which we have really been working on following the road service review, which is with the intention of giving as much information as we can in that kind of weekly update. Now, if there's a feeling that is still sort of falling a bit short in detail, then happy to take that away and look at what members are getting. I think I don't know if that's just a sort of general comment from members, but we'll certainly look at the detail that goes out.
If I could just come in, Sean, for a minute, I kind of share your frustrations in a way, because yeah, we do get that, Mike, but it's it's a whole region, and you have to rake through to find your ward to see what's actually happening. But at the same token, I'm not going to take people away from the front line to go down to wards, for example. You know, if that was an easy process, I'd be suggesting maybe that's a way forward. But if it's going to be a logistical problem that's going to take up resources that can be used elsewhere, I'm quite happy just to scroll through and find out in my ward what's actually happening. So I've got Stephen coming in on the same point as Sean. Sean, are you okay just to let Stephen come in now?
Absolutely.
Okay, right. Okay, Stephen, in you come.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so I appreciate maybe there's information going to different places, and we're maybe not all getting it in front of us. I don't know if that's something we could look at. I know that in the monthly ward officer updates, we do get an indication of you know, if there's going to be a pothole patching squad in wards 9, 10 and 11, for example. You know, there's information that gets shared with us and community councils, for example. But I'm not aware of a weekly list that I would necessarily get, although I do get notifications of road closures, which with a wee bit of work you can sort of share online for information to constituents. But I think there's maybe a smarter way to do it, although as the Chair sort of said, obviously we wouldn't want to be too onerous if it's going to be counterproductive. But I think we can, as we fully embrace digital technology, there's probably a smart and a simplified way we could do this, subject to change, of course, because I know things can change with other factors. But I'm not sure if I'm getting a weekly list. That's what I would say there. Thank you.
No, I would like to come back on that as well. I don't think I get a weekly list.
Chair, more than happy to take this issue away and speak with colleagues in relation to the detail that goes out in the weekly communications and see what we can do to refine and distill down the information as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Mike, and I think that's basically what the last two members are asking, and I'm sure others agree with them. You can never have too much information. As Stephen picked up, if it was an onerous task, it would take people off front line, and I would be kind of wary about that. But I think you're right. We do need to have a look at maybe the bigger, wider picture. You know, and it's maybe something for the director or to take away and look at how we get some of this vital information out to the public, and often through the councillors as well. So I think you're right. We need to have a look at it offline. We're not going to fix it today, that's a certainty. And let you and others work on how we can get that information best to elected members and the public, of course, in due process. So I'm comfy with that. Gail, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, it's just on the notifications. We used to get a weekly update, which was very effective. I suspect that the individual that sent that out to us has since been promoted because they were very competent and maybe moved into another part of the department. But we used to get a comprehensive list each week of works across the region, but specifically for us in Annandale and Eskdale. Now we only get the emergency work. So really it would just be a case of reverting back to what good practice we did have up until maybe just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I take your point, Gail, and it's probably a logistical issue here. We'd maybe need to take offline and discuss with the senior leadership team in the department and to see how best we can just put the right resource there to get this out so that everybody's kept informed.
There was a very competent individual that was tasked with that, and they've moved on into another area, and that just simply hasn't been backfilled yet. So just revert back to what we were doing.
Yeah, I picked it up, Pauline, and sorry, Gail, and that was exactly what I was getting at here. We need to work behind the scenes because we can't put a thing in place what used to be there. We're looking for the future, so but I take your point entirely. Pauline, last speaker, and then we'll move on, I think, yeah.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much, Chair. Mike, I just wondered, have you had a chance with the rest of the officers to look at the new JCB Pothole Pro? I know the budget wouldn't extend to that at the moment, but it increases pothole refill times with the surveys that have been done down south by the speed of refilling is up by 75%, which would be most helpful in Dumfries and Galloway. So it's perhaps something we can maybe bring to another committee in the future if you haven't already had a chance to look at it, but certainly getting good reviews at the moment, although I'm no expert, of course, but one to look at for the future. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We have been doing a series of trials with different pieces of equipment in conjunction with our colleagues in fleet operations. That hasn't been concluded yet, and we're doing what I would term a fairly extensive review of how efficient some of these new pieces of kit on the market are. But again, happy to provide feedback in whatever form members wish in the future once we've actually concluded that work.
Okay, Pauline, you'll get feedback on that, and I'm assuming that will take some time. When do you expect that pilot programme to come to an end, Mike?
Chair, I would probably anticipate probably middle of the summer.
Okay, so it'll certainly not be us getting the information. It'll be next the Communities Committee, probably in the autumn, is what you're saying, yeah?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'd rather have a full assessment than something done quickly, just to keep people happy, I would suggest. Right, okay. I said that would be the last question, so I'm going to move on to the recommendations. Are we happy to agree the recommendations 2.1 to 2.3? Okay, I'm not hearing anything contrary. That's agreed. So we'll move on now to the licence to occupy the Lowerburn Hall in Dumfries. Report is to advise members of the request by the Electric Theatre Company, trading as the Big Burn Supper, to occupy the Lowerburn Hall, Dumfries, from the 1st of April 2022 until the 28th of February 2023 at nil rent. We have Nick Lane and Paul McCulloch available through Teams to take any questions on the report. Are you there, Paul? Nick?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah,
good morning, Paul.
Happy to take questions on the report.
Okay, thank you. Nothing to add at this stage?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks very much, Paul. Any questions? Gail?
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I've no problems at all with the recommendations for this. We were contacted, a few members were contacted by the Dumfries Choir, who I believe also utilised the Lowerburn Hall in conjunction with the Big Burn Supper. So I suppose it's really not just the Big Burn Supper that are utilising that space at the moment. Dumfries Choir's in there, and it's just to ensure that going forward, when they have to vacate potentially early next year, that we maybe have some liaison with the choir to ensure that they have a home to go to as well.
Yeah, any comment on that, Paul? I think it's a given that we'll be working with some of these groups over the next, well, basically almost a year, isn't it, Paul?
Absolutely, Chair, and thanks for the comments. Dumfries Choir are working collaboratively with the Big Burn Supper in terms of those events. Yep.
Yeah, because I think they're on the agenda, or they're on the programme. I'm not sure what you call it. Jane?
Just a couple of questions, Chairman. I'd like to understand the difference between a lease and the licence to occupy, whether there is a, what are the implications there for the council's property. I presume that the Electric Theatre Company would have paid for the two weeks that it would have occupied the premises. And do we actually do anything like requiring a deposit with respect to dealing with any unforeseen damage or anything? It's a question simply of protecting the property.
Do you want to take that, Paul? You want Nick to take it?
Yeah, no, happy to take that, Chair. So first question, lease or licence, there is no real difference. It's just a terminology. We would obviously protect the council's asset through the granting of that licence with standard conditions around things like condition and sort of occupation requirements. So no real difference there in terms of risk to the council. In terms of that 2-week period, because the Big Burn Supper were originally intending to erect the Spiegel tent within the Lorburn Hall car park, it was agreed that sort of 2-week period of initial occupation that was intended when they had their initial proposal for the 2-week event would just happen. With regards to a deposit, it's not something we've considered, but what we will do as part of this process is ensure that the property is returned to the condition that it was in prior to any occupation. So we'll obviously work with the Burn Supper to ensure that. What I would also say, just in terms of condition, obviously we have the Lorburn Hall. It was used for a period of time when DG1 was vacated. Since then, the hall, while surplus, has proved difficult in terms of future use. So to have someone in the building and occupying it and sort of paying their way in terms of utilities is not a bad thing for us. Within the report, we've identified that we'll consider further use of the Lorburn Hall into the future. And I think we're looking at bringing something back to the new council, perhaps in the autumn, around about the potential long-term future of the Lorburn Hall.
Thank you.
Okay, Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I suppose it ties into what Paul's just said there, just about the long-term use of the building. Obviously, it's probably well known that it's a common good asset for Dumfries Common Good. And I wonder if we have a council-wide approach to how we have oversight of common good assets. I know certainly in Lochmaven and Lockerbie and Annan, for example, there's a kind of matrix, if you like, of all the common good assets and the relevant leases or the statuses of each of the assets, that fall under that particular area. And obviously with Dumfries as well, there's quite a lot of interest in assets that I'm sure the residents of the borough of Dumfries would be very interested in sort of having sight of, as is their right, if you like. So it would be good to see going forward that oversight is there. And I appreciate, I don't want to tread on the toes of the Dumfries Common Good subcommittee members, but is that something that we would have to take a more corporate approach to? Because clearly, it's in the interests of the residents to know what's going on with that and why we're taking the decisions we do, for example. So it's really just a plea that we can maybe be a wee bit more consistent about getting that common good asset information out there and across the piece. Thank you.
Any comment, Paul?
Yeah, thanks, and through you, Chair. Yeah, so we are working across the common good asset type. So Work's underway. There's been a lot of work done over in the Lochmaber and Lockerbie area recently, but we're expanding that across the region in terms of working with our legal colleagues. I suppose first to identify title, and sometimes that can be very challenging, particularly with common good and the historical element of that. But yes, as the answer to the question, we're looking to standardise our approach to the management of property information, particularly with regards to common good.
Okay, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think we know that Lorburn Hall is common good, but so it would be interesting that Common Good Subcommittee in Dumfries would have oversight of any changes to leases, for example, which is normally a material consideration about the use of the asset. So, but I'll leave it in the hands of Dumfries Common Good members. But yeah, that's encouraging. Thanks, Paul. Yeah,
just for clarity, there wasn't time to convene a common good, so it was taken as business at the area committee, and we withdrew delegation. So that's the reason why the area committee have got a recommendation to FPT as well. It's technically when we removed that delegation, we as an area committee took the place of the common good, for lack of better words. Hence, that's why it's coming here. I think that's a technical reason, I think, Paul, that you guided me on. So unless there's any more questions, I'm getting ready to go to recommendations. Okay, so I've got nobody else coming in, so are we happy to agree the recommendations at 2.1 to 2.3? Okay, thank you very much, everybody. We'll move on to item number 17, disposal of surplus land at Annan Swimming Pool. The purpose of the report is to ask members to agree that land at Annan Swimming Pool detailed within this report is surplus to the record of the Communities Directorate. Andrew Maxwell is available through Teams to take any questions on the report. Andrew, have you any update? Are you going straight to questions?
No, I'm fine. If anybody's got any questions, I'll try and answer them.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Any questions for Andrew? No. Jane, is that you want to speak on this one? Or Sean? Sean first, sorry, and then Jane. Sean?
Yeah, no problem with the actual proposal. Just want to check the processes. Has this been to Annandale and Estill Area Committee, or will it be going there as well, or is this one that doesn't need to go there?
It'll need to go to the Annandale Area Committee, and this is the problem that I have at the moment, is that I might need expedited procedures for this one because Annandale and Estill Area Committee is tomorrow. So there wouldn't be time to do that, so I might have to write a short report and inform members regarding the actual disposal process for that. But it would need to go to the Annandale and Estill Area Committee or through expedited procedures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the chair's on, Stephen's on at the moment, so it might be worth commenting on tomorrow at tomorrow's meeting. So. Just before you ask, Andrew, the process that I understand is it comes to here first, and we say it's surplus to requirement, then it goes through the disposal process. I think, am I right?
That's correct. It goes through the whole department first, yes. And then after that it goes to the area committee or to the common good committee. And that'll go to the first, whichever one it is. So the business today, Sean, the business today is it surplus to requirements, not the next part of the process. So let's move on, please. Okay, so I've got Jane Maitland, Pauline Drysdale, and then Stephen Thompson.
Thanks, Chairman. It's a question really about looking at the plan there and about future-proofing. I'm curious to know why we would necessarily sell a small area like that as opposed to long lease, which then gives you the flexibility if in the future you required that property to be sold. I just know that when you get a tiny bit like that, in a bit of property, it could be a kind of wrinkle in the system in the future. And I just don't understand why it has to be sold as opposed to leased.
Sales and leases, well, sometimes we had either go through the process of a 99-year lease, but really they're the same thing. It's like, you know, year lease, they've got control of that property for 99 years. Disposals are quicker to go through than a lease, because if you grant a lease, then it's normally that you would have to register a title in the name of Dumfries and Galloway Council. And that can take some time to do, because a lot of these, you know, it might be in the county or everything the region, Andale and Eskdale region. So sometimes it's quicker doing a disposal, and it's easier than granting a 99-year lease. The minimum requirement that Scottish Power will ask for before they energise any electricity substation is a 99-year lease.
That makes sense, Jane. Okay, I think, okay, I'm going to move on to Pauline. I've lost Jane there, and then Stephen.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks very much, Andrew. Just a quick question. It is about procedures, and it was with regards to once it's gone to area committee, or sorry, once it's come to us, say on communities, then it goes, no, it comes to area committee or common good first, does it? Then communities, it's all a bit confusing. When that happens and it's got, no, it's from here, isn't it? Then on to sorry, I'm getting myself mixed up. Then on to area committee or common good committee. Once that's happened, could you maybe drop us as members an email, because there seems to be a little bit of confusion, Andrew, with what happens after that stage. Is it at that point that interested members or members of the community get an email? I just think the whole procedure is a bit confusing for members, I will be honest. So if you could drop me an email, or all of us an email with regards to that, I'd be grateful. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Andrew, Paul McCulloch wants to come in, I think, probably in direct answer to that.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Drysdale. So what we'll do as part of this process is we will provide the very recently agreed acquisitions and disposals policy. There's a quite a well laid out flow chart in there that articulates the steps necessary to undertake a disposal of this type. So I'm happy that we can share that out as part of this process. Okay, thanks very much for that offer, Paul. And I'm sure you've got to share it with all 43 members, yeah? And then Stephen, come in, please.
Yeah, I think, I mean, just in terms of the reference earlier to a paper coming to Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee as the sort of de facto common good oversight committee in the absence of it going to the common good subcommittee for Annan. There's nothing in this particular report that screams urgent at me, so I wouldn't normally be minded to see that in the papers for tomorrow with less than 24 hours notice. There's no sort of blue lights flashing or anything. So, however, I mean, we already have a paper which was, I suppose, expedited to reach area committee tomorrow because it was common good. So I think even that was at short notice, if you like. And I think there is something about, we seem to be declaring things surplus when we get an expression of interest. And maybe it just appears like that. But there is something about, we should maybe know in advance if something's surplus rather than wait for the interest to be expressed. And maybe that's what's sometimes causing confusion, because there does seem to be a flurry of activity when we get an expression of interest, and then suddenly a paper will appear at certain committees, and then there's a timing issue. So there's maybe something in there, because it's not necessarily the disposal process, it's the declaring of surplus stage that seems to be flagging up some of these questions. I don't know if that's something you've reflected on, Chair, if maybe that's something we could
Stephen, sorry, that last point's very well made, and like you, I don't see anything in this report that actually blue flags it to go straight through some expedited process tomorrow. If that's what can get through governance, we can do that, then good and well. I would suggest, but I do take your point that we need to have some system that in place that actually flags up long before there's an interest declared in a piece of property that it might be surplus to the requirements of the department. I would think it's a logistics problem. It's probably an asset problem, a human asset problem in getting that job done. So I think it's probably a piece of work that needs to go away. I'm kind of looking across here and at the director, or Sean, the interim director, as a piece of work we need to take on board, or the department needs to take on board over the coming months and period of time. I don't think we can do it today. We're certainly not going to make up that on the back of a cigarette packet, for lack of better words. So, but I think the comment's well made. It's well, and it's noted, and we'll take that forward. And one of the last things we'll do here as chair and vice chair is to try and progress that as best we can. Yeah. So I think, is there any more comment or any other more questions on this piece of land being surplus to requirements? Because that's exactly what we're actually discussing here today. Is it surplus to requirements? Know what's got to be happening after it. Okay, so I'm not seeing anybody coming in. Okay, so I'm going to move to the recommendations. Are we happy to agree with the recommendation?
Chair.
Stephen?
Yeah, so at minor point, no issue with the actual declaring of the asset surplus. I would suggest, though, that I think full council trumps all subcommittees, area committees and everything, so it might be fairer to give a bit more notice for a report to go to full council, rather than, if the leader or the is so minded, rather than sort of ram something through on sort of no real, as I say, there's nothing here that sort of says this is urgent or an emergency, so if there is something pressing, maybe a few days' notice to full council might be more appropriate. But again, maybe that's a governance issue. Thank you.
We'll take your comments on board, Stephen, and obviously officers will work with governance to see what the feasibility of that is just exactly are. So, right, I'm back again. Are we agreeing the recommendation? There only is one, it's surplus to requirements. Yeah, okay, agreed. Thank you very much. Right, I've got no other business deemed urgent. However, I now need to go to item number 19, which is the Local Government Scotland Act of 1973. Consider adoption of resolution to exclude the public from the meeting in terms of section 50A, subsection 4, and paragraph 6, 8 and 9 of part 1 of Schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act of 1973. Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. I'm going to suggest we'll just take a 5-minute break to get onto the new